Make up your mind.
Hollywood's golden age wasn't always as glamorous as it seemed. Behind the iconic performances, some of its biggest stars had a little too much love for the bottle.
This is very old wine.
From the roaring 20s to the swinging 60s, tales of on-set antics, slurred lines, and legendary parties have become part of their legacy. But who were the stars who couldn't put down the drink? Join us as we uncover 15 Hollywood stars who were always drunk.
Oh, small steak rare.
Medium.
Rare, and a baked potato and some cream spinach.
Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy, a two-time Oscar winner and one of Hollywood's finest actors, had a complicated relationship with alcohol. While he dazzled audiences on the silver screen with his natural charm and powerful performances, behind the scenes, Tracy struggled with severe alcoholism that often spiraled out of control. Tracy wasn't a social drinker or someone who could manage his liquor well. When he drank, it was all-consuming. He would often lock himself away in hotel rooms, most famously at the Hotel St. George in Brooklyn Heights. There, he would drink for days, even weeks straight. Speaking of which, whiskey was his drink of choice, and he would go through bottle after bottle while sitting in the bathtub, refusing to get up, even for basic needs. And did you know that his drinking created such chaos that MGM, the studio that hired him after he walked out on Fox, had to take drastic measures to protect both Tracy and their investment? They formed a special team called the Tracy Squad. This wasn't a regular support team. It included an ambulance driver, a doctor, and security guards disguised as paramedics. They were on standby 24/7, ready to swoop in whenever Tracy caused a scene. Local bars within a 25-mile radius were even given the squad's number. If Tracy showed up and started causing trouble, they would call, and the team would rush in to defuse the situation. Once, he reportedly woke up in a padded cell after one of his benders got out of hand. But Tracy wasn't just known for his drinking. On screen, he was brilliant, starring in classics like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Father of the Bride. Off-screen, he battled inner demons that turned him into a tragic figure. His talent was undeniable, but so was the toll his drinking took on his life and career. Richard Harris. Richard Harris was as famous for his wild ways as he was for his acting talent. Born in Ireland, he grew up with a rebellious streak that stuck with him throughout his life. His love for alcohol started young, and by his teenage years, he was already making headlines in his local town for his antics. One of his most outrageous stories happened when he crashed a truck into a low bridge after a few drinks. Instead of panicking, Harris jokingly told the police, "I'm delivering this bridge to Limerick." That quick wit became a signature of his larger-than-life personality. In London, where he trained as an actor, Harris quickly became a regular in the nightlife scene. He didn't just enjoy a drink or two, he could down 6 double vodkas in one sitting, and bartenders often had them lined up before he even asked. It wasn't long before his hard-drinking ways landed him in the drunk tank, where he became a familiar face to the local police. But it wasn't all chaos. Harris was incredibly talented, delivering unforgettable performances in movies like This Sporting Life and Camelot. He brought raw intensity to his roles, earning him a reputation as one of the greatest actors of his time. Behind the scenes, though, his life was as dramatic as his performances. From hosting impromptu parties with complete strangers to turning a simple trip into a multi-day pub crawl, Harris lived life on his own terms. Despite his self-destructive tendencies, Harris managed to pull off a late career resurgence. He famously portrayed Albus Dumbledore in the first 2 Harry Potter movies, showing the world that even a hard-living legend could leave behind a magical legacy. He passed away in 2002, leaving behind tales as unforgettable as his work. Clara Bow. Famously known as Hollywood's original It Girl, Clara Bow was as famous for her wild behavior as she was for her iconic roles. Known for her charm and carefree spirit, Bow became the embodiment of the flapper lifestyle in the 1920s. But her rise to fame wasn't easy. She came from a troubled home in Brooklyn, with a mentally ill mother and a father accused of inappropriate behavior. Despite this, Bow broke into Hollywood and changed the game with her bold, modern image. But fame came with scandal. Bow loved to party and didn't shy away from the nightlife. She drank heavily, gambled openly, and was known for her colorful vocabulary. Her behavior often shocked even the most jaded Hollywood insiders. Some stories about her were exaggerated, like the infamous claim that she entertained the entire USC football team, but others had more truth to them. One infamous tale happened at a Paramount party. The studio president, B.P. Schulberg, invited her to meet Judge Ben Lindsay, a controversial figure at the time. Bow showed up drunk and wasted no time making an impression. She greeted the judge with a bold French kiss, completely ignoring his wife standing beside him. Then, while dancing, she started unbuttoning his shirt and even attempted to unzip his pants before being dragged away by studio staff. It was scandalous, even by Hollywood standards. Despite the gossip, Bow was an undeniable trailblazer. She starred in the smash hit It, which earned her the nickname It Girl, and her lively, unapologetic personality helped shape the image of the modern starlet. However, the constant scrutiny and wild rumors eventually took a toll on her mental health. Bow left the spotlight in the 1930s, but her legacy as one of Hollywood's most unforgettable stars lives on. W.C. Fields. Born William Claude Dukenfield in 1880, W.C. Fields was one of the most iconic comedians of his time, but his love for alcohol was almost as famous as his wit. Known for his sharp humor and grumpy persona on screen, Fields often played the role of a cruel drunk, a character that wasn't far from reality. His blotchy complexion and trademark red nose were telltale signs of his long battle with alcohol. Did you know that Fields was so dedicated to drinking that he even had a humorous take on his addiction? One of his most famous quotes was, "I never drink water. I'm afraid it will become habit-forming." True to his word, he rarely went without a drink, even starting his day with gin. While working on movie sets, he carried a flask filled with martinis, calling it his lemonade. Once, as a prank, someone replaced it with actual lemonade, and Fields angrily yelled, "Who put lemonade in my lemonade?" During Prohibition, Fields went to extreme lengths to ensure he never ran out of alcohol. He hoarded thousands of bottles of whiskey and gin in his attic, explaining his stash with a grin, "You never know when Prohibition might come back." Even after it ended, he kept his collection stocked just in case. But behind the jokes and the stashes of booze, Fields suffered the harsh realities of alcoholism. In his later years, he experienced severe tremors and hallucinations, symptoms of his heavy drinking catching up with him. Despite his struggles, Fields never lost his sense of humor, famously quipping, "Back in my rummy days, I would tremble and shake for hours upon arising." Fields passed away in 1946 at the age of 66, leaving behind a legacy as one of Hollywood's greatest comedic legends, both on screen and off. Humphrey Bogart. Did you know that Humphrey Bogart, too, was as well known for his drinking habits as he was for his unforgettable performances? Born in 1899, Bogart became the face of classic films like Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon. Off-screen, however, he lived a life that often mirrored the tough and cynical characters he played. Bogart's drinking began during his early days as a Broadway actor in New York. Known for his fiery temper and love of the nightlife, he often drank until he passed out at the bar. If anyone dared wake him, they risked facing his wrath. His late-night antics got him fired from more than one production, but his talent kept opening doors. Eventually, Hollywood called, and Bogart took his wild ways west. In Los Angeles, Bogart became a regular at the Garden of Allah, a notorious hotel famous for its 24-hour bar and party-loving guests. His drinking crew included legends like John Huston and Frank Sinatra, and together they were the life of every party. Bogart even came up with the original idea for the Rat Pack, a group that would later become legendary in Hollywood's social scene. Despite his love of drinking, Bogart was a professional on set. He was known for his punctuality and near-perfect memory for lines. During work, he limited himself to just one beer at lunch, saving the heavy drinking for after hours. Once the cameras stopped rolling, though, it was game on. Bogart was famous for shouting "Scotch" as he wrapped up his day, quickly diving into drinks with his friends. Speaking of which, one of his most famous drinking stories happened during the filming of The African Queen. While most of the crew fell ill from bad water, Bogart and the director stayed healthy. They drank only whiskey. Humphrey Bogart lived hard, drank harder, and still managed to leave behind a legacy that cemented him as one of the greatest stars of all time. Peter O'Toole. The legendary star of Lawrence of Arabia wasn't just famous for his acting skills. He was also known for his wild and unpredictable lifestyle. A larger-than-life figure, O'Toole loved drinking so much that it became part of his personality. But unlike some others on this list, his drinking tales were often more humorous than tragic. One of the most famous stories about O'Toole involves a pub he was drinking at late one night. When the bartender told him it was closing time, O'Toole decided he wasn't ready to stop. So what did he do? He bought the pub on the spot. The next morning he returned to tear up the check, but the story of that night became legendary. He even remained close friends with the pub owner until the owner's passing. And O'Toole's drinking wasn't just about quantity, it came with some bizarre adventures. He was known to black out and wake up in the most random places, like Mexico or a stranger's apartment with Michael Caine. During one wild night, he cut off the tip of his finger, used the brandy he was drinking to sterilize it, and tried to reattach it himself. Weeks later, when it still hurt, he realized he had put the finger on backward. But O'Toole wasn't just a fun-loving drunk. He was also incredibly talented. Over his career, he was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, with his final nod coming in 2006 for the film Venus. Despite his chaotic lifestyle, he lived to the age of 81, defying the odds. Even in his later years, when doctors warned that one more drink could kill him, O'Toole kept his love for the pub scene alive, switching whiskey for lemonade but keeping the same lively spirit. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was the ultimate Hollywood bad boy. Known for his good looks and daring charm, Flynn lived a life as wild off-screen as the adventures he portrayed on it. From sword fights to scandals, his antics earned him the title of one of Hollywood's original hellraisers. But his love for alcohol? That's what truly made him legendary. Flynn's drinking habits were anything but ordinary. He would carry bottles of vodka to movie sets and had a unique way of sneaking his drinks. Instead of sipping from a glass, he injected vodka into oranges. To anyone watching, it looked like he was just eating a healthy snack. But for Flynn, it was a clever way to stay buzzed without raising suspicion. And he was no stranger to wild parties either. Flynn shared a bachelor pad with fellow actor David Niven, nicknamed Cirrhosis by the Sea, where drinking and debauchery were the norm. Morning Bloody Marys replaced whiskey to mask the smell of alcohol, but the drinking never stopped. Even after being warned by a doctor at 32 that his heavy drinking would kill him within 5 years, Flynn didn't slow down. Instead, he seemed to take it as a challenge. He continued his hard-partying lifestyle, managing to defy the odds for another 13 years before a heart attack caused by liver damage claimed his life at just 50. Flynn's death was as dramatic as his life. True to his infamous reputation, he was buried with 6 bottles of whiskey in his coffin, which many thought was a fitting farewell for a man who lived unapologetically. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was one of Hollywood's most talented and handsome leading men. His brooding looks and intense acting made him a star in classics like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. But behind the camera, Clift lived a life of pain and struggle, much of which he drowned in alcohol. Clift's troubles began long before his car accident in 1956, but that event changed everything. Driving home from a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's house, he lost control of his car and crashed in Benedict Canyon. The accident left his beautiful face shattered. His jaw was broken, his nose smashed, and his cheekbone destroyed. Though surgeons managed to repair his face, Clift was never the same. The man once considered one of Hollywood's most beautiful was now haunted by his own reflection. After the accident, Clift turned to alcohol and prescription drugs to cope with his physical pain and emotional torment. He had always struggled with his sexuality in an era when being gay was unacceptable for a leading man, and the accident only deepened his inner turmoil. His close friendship with Elizabeth Taylor, one of his biggest supporters, was one of the few things that gave him comfort. On set, Clift's struggles were obvious. During the filming of Judgment at Nuremberg, he could barely remember his lines and had to improvise most of his performance. Yet his raw talent shone through, earning him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Sadly, Clift's self-destructive behavior continued until his early death at age 45. Years of heavy drinking and drug use took their toll, and he passed away from a heart attack in 1966. Robert Mitchum. Known for his rugged looks, deep voice, and calm demeanor on screen, Robert Mitchum built a legendary career in westerns and film noirs. But off-screen, Mitchum was a notorious troublemaker, fueled by alcohol, women, and a devil-may-care attitude. And he certainly was the ultimate Hollywood rebel. Speaking of which, Mitchum's drinking stories were as wild as his movie plots. On the set of His Kind of Woman, a fight scene turned into a real brawl. Mitchum, having started drinking early that day, forgot he was acting and began throwing punches for real. The stuntmen, understandably upset, fought back, and the set erupted into chaos. But for Mitchum, this was just another day at work. His reputation for mixing booze with trouble was well known, so much so that even directors gave up trying to control him. During River of No Return, alcohol was banned on set, but when the director caught an actor sneaking vodka, the explanation, "It's for Mitchum," was enough to let it slide. But Mitchum's larger-than-life personality wasn't just about drinking. He once described working with Frank Sinatra and Lee Marvin as more of a brewery than a cast. Together they partied, trashed hotel rooms, and caused mayhem wherever they went. But Mitchum also had a softer side. Despite his wild lifestyle, he stayed married to his childhood sweetheart, Dorothy Spence, for 57 years. His career wasn't without scandal. In 1948, Mitchum was caught in a marijuana sting and sent to jail for 60 days. The headlines could have destroyed him, but Mitchum shrugged it off, calling it a minor inconvenience. Despite his wild ways, Mitchum remained one of Hollywood's biggest stars for over 5 decades, starring in classics like The Night of the Hunter and Cape Fear. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's life was a tragic tale of Hollywood's dark side. Born in 1927 in a small Midwest town, she dreamed of fame and glamour. By the time she was in her early 20s, she had moved to Los Angeles, working as a model and showgirl. Her stunning blue eyes and carefree charm soon caught the attention of Hollywood. Universal Studios signed her, and she began appearing in B-movie westerns, hoping for her big break. Barbara quickly became known as the Queen of the nightclubs, rubbing shoulders with Hollywood elite like Howard Hughes, Bob Hope, and even mobster Mickey Cohen. She was a regular at the hottest parties and loved the nightlife. But it wasn't long before her partying started to overshadow her career. While she gained some fame from films like Trapped and Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, her reckless behavior and relationships with bad company began to take a toll. One of her most infamous moments was a love triangle involving actors Francho Tone and Tom Neal. The relationship turned violent, and Neal brutally beat Tone, causing a scandal that tarnished Barbara's reputation. Studios began to back away, and work became harder to find. As her career faded, Barbara's personal life spiraled out of control. She drank heavily, partied non-stop, and got involved with people who dragged her further into a destructive lifestyle. By her 30s, she was living in a rundown apartment on Skid Row, reportedly turning to prostitution to pay for alcohol. Her memoir, I Am Not Ashamed, revealed the depths of her struggles, from her glory days to her heartbreaking downfall. Barbara Payton passed away at just 39 years old from heart and liver failure caused by years of alcohol abuse. Frank Sinatra, the legendary voice behind classics like My Way and Fly Me to the Moon, Frank Sinatra, was just as famous for his love of Jack Daniels as he was for his music. Born in 1915, Sinatra grew up in a speakeasy owned by his parents, where he first performed as a child. This early exposure to the nightlife shaped his entire life, making bars and whiskey a part of his daily routine. Sinatra wasn't shy about his love for Jack Daniels. In fact, he was known to drink an entire bottle every day, a habit he kept up well into his later years. He even called it the nectar of the gods. Sinatra liked his Jack neat, with just a few ice cubes and a splash of water. His loyalty to the drink was so strong that he had a Jack Daniels flag raised at his home in Palm Springs whenever it was drinking time. The Rat Pack, Sinatra's legendary group of friends, often joked about their love for partying and drinking, dubbing themselves the Olympic Drinking Team. Whether it was Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., or the rest of the crew, Sinatra was always at the center of the action, drink in hand. But Sinatra's drinking wasn't just about fun. It was a constant part of his life, even on stage. At his shows, he kept a bottle of Jack Daniels on his bar cart, often raising his glass to the audience. His love for the drink boosted its popularity worldwide, and he became so synonymous with the brand that Jack Daniels created a special edition in his honor. When Sinatra passed away in 1998 at the age of 82, his love for Jack Daniels followed him to the grave. He was buried with a bottle of his favorite whiskey, cementing his legacy as the bourbon baritone who lived and drank on his own terms. Ann-Margret. Ann-Margret, born Ann-Margret Olsen on April 28, 1941 in Sweden, became one of Hollywood's brightest stars. Known for her glamorous looks and magnetic performances, she was often called one of the original sex kittens. Her career took off after comedian George Burns discovered her, leading to her breakout role in Bye Bye Birdie. She quickly rose to fame as a leading actress and singer, starring alongside legends like Elvis Presley and Viva Las Vegas. While her on-screen charm seemed effortless, Ann-Margret battled inner struggles that led her down a difficult path. Anxiety was one of her biggest challenges, and she turned to alcohol to cope. The habit began on the set of RPM, where her nerves about filming a nude scene pushed her to start drinking. By the early 1970s, her dependency had spiraled out of control. She described drinking a full bottle of scotch, passing out, waking up, and doing it all over again. Her days blurred into a continuous haze of alcohol and sleeping pills. The pain of losing her father in 1972 and suffering a near-fatal fall during a performance only deepened her struggles. Ann-Margret later admitted that Hollywood's party culture made it easy to escape into substance abuse, saying, "The easy thing in Hollywood is to tune out, to drink and use drugs." Despite her challenges, Ann-Margret fought back. By 1980, she quit drinking for good and started rebuilding her life. Her autobiography, My Story, revealed the highs and lows of her journey and how she overcame addiction. In a 1982 interview, when a waiter offered her a drink, she replied with humor, "I don't drink, but I do the hoochie coo." Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor, one of Hollywood's most iconic stars, lived a life filled with fame, fortune, and deep personal struggles. Known for her beauty and powerful performances in films like Cleopatra and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Taylor also battled alcohol addiction and prescription painkiller dependency for much of her life. On set, her drinking became a significant issue. There were times when Taylor was too intoxicated to deliver her lines, causing delays and frustration among her co-stars. Her love for cocktails, especially Bloody Marys, became a way to escape her personal pain. Reflecting on her habits, she once said, "I'd wake up with a hangover and say, 'I'm never doing that again.' But by the next drink, I'd forgotten." Taylor's struggles became even more pronounced during her tumultuous relationships, particularly with Richard Burton, whom she married and divorced twice. Their fiery romance was marked by intense love and mutual self-destruction. Burton once wrote in his diary about how their heavy drinking had turned their lives into a haze, calling it a half-life. Despite their issues, Taylor later pushed Burton to seek medical help for his excessive alcohol consumption. In 1983, Taylor made headlines by entering the Betty Ford Center for Treatment, becoming one of the first celebrities to openly seek help for addiction. Her decision was groundbreaking, opening doors for others to follow. During her recovery, Taylor wrote about the importance of support and how it gave her hope. After rehab, she committed to sobriety, saying, "Not being drunk is the only way I'm going to stay alive." Although she relapsed briefly in 1988, Taylor spent the rest of her life living sober. She became an advocate for recovery, proving that even in the face of immense challenges, it's possible to reclaim your life. Taylor passed away in 2011, remembered as much for her resilience as her incredible talent. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was a force of nature both on and off the stage. Born into a wealthy Alabama family in 1902, she left home at 15 to chase her dream of becoming an actress in New York. She moved into the Algonquin Hotel, famous for hosting the witty and hard-drinking Algonquin Round Table. Surrounded by legends like Dorothy Parker and Robert Benchley, Tallulah quickly became known for her sharp tongue, fearless attitude, and love of bourbon. Her antics at the Algonquin were so legendary that the hotel owner, Frank Case, joked, "I can either run this hotel or look after Tallulah Bankhead. I can't do both." Her drinking was part of her charm, but also part of her trouble. Tallulah didn't believe in moderation. She could finish a bottle of bourbon in less than 30 minutes and didn't stop at alcohol. She mixed drinks with pills, ammonia, and even horse tranquilizers. During World War II, the horrors of the war deeply affected her. In a surprising show of restraint, she vowed not to drink until the British are back in Dunkirk. Remarkably, she kept her promise, proving there was more depth to her than her party girl image suggested. But after the war, she returned to her old habits, downing 2 bottles of bourbon a day. Tallulah's lifestyle eventually caught up with her. She began to lose roles in Hollywood because of her reputation for drinking. When she auditioned for the Glass Menagerie, her performance was praised as brilliant, but the studio refused to cast her due to her unpredictable behavior. Toward the end of her life, her health deteriorated, yet even as her body faded, her sharp wit remained. Her reported last words, "codeine, bourbon," perfectly summed up her wild, unapologetic spirit. Tallulah Bankhead was truly one of a kind. Richard Burton. Richard Burton, one of the greatest actors of his time, lived a life that was as dramatic as his roles. Born in 1925, Burton was known for his powerful performances in Cleopatra, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and countless Shakespearean plays. But off the stage and screen, he was just as famous for his heavy drinking. Burton claimed he started drinking at the age of 12. By the height of his career, alcohol was a part of his daily routine. He famously began each day with beer, often finishing an entire case before lunchtime. Once the beer was gone, he'd move on to hard liquor, with vodka being his drink of choice. At his worst, Burton was said to consume up to 3 bottles of vodka a day. His marriage to Elizabeth Taylor, one of Hollywood's most iconic couples, was filled with passion and chaos. Their shared love for drinking often fueled their tumultuous relationship. While Burton started his day at 7 a.m. with a drink, Taylor, by comparison, was more restrained, waiting until 10 a.m. Their lifestyle was indulgent and unapologetic. On the set of The Night of the Iguana, Burton insisted on having 2 bars installed, one at the top of the staircase and another at the bottom. Despite warnings from doctors, Burton never slowed down. His body paid the price. By the time of his death in 1984, at just 58 years old, years of drinking had left his kidneys swollen and his spine coated with crystallized alcohol. A cerebral hemorrhage ended his life suddenly, leaving behind a legacy of remarkable talent and self-destruction. And that wraps up our look at 15 Hollywood stars who lived life with a drink in hand. Were there any names on this list that completely surprised you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.